the Nothing But Ball poll. And the way that we go about this, it's not the same as the AP poll. It's not the same as the coaches poll. It's not the same as any analytics you want to throw at it. We factor different pieces of analytics into this. Like we look at resume, obviously, but that's not the only thing we look at. What we look at is college football. We look at lines of scrimmage. We look at who you have at different positions. We look at rosters. We look at college football. We don't look at all the external things that go into college football. We factor in the external to a piece because there's some parts of that that's relevant to college football, but we don't pretend that that's like how you should rank these teams based on those different statistics and categories that just kind of get too much weight in certain conversations. So it's ball and nothing but ball on this very show, and we appreciate y'all being a part of that, and we appreciate y'all making that a reality. So without further ado, let's get into our top 10 going into week 6 of the college football season. Again, I'm excited for all of us to agree on this. I'm sure there will be no kickback, and I'm sure we will all just be in lockstep here on every single one of these top 10, as y'all have communicated from seeing this on my social media. So at number 10, we have got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And Notre Dame, they have a ranked win on their schedule, or on their resume rather, over Duke on the road, which I think is worth something. That was a good Duke football team. That's not your daddy's Duke. That's a really good Duke football team with Riley Leonard, who will have an NFL career that you would have to imagine he'll be picked somewhere in those top 3 rounds. That's the way that he's talked about right now. What do our eyes tell us with Notre Dame? Like when we just throw all the extracurricular aside and, oh, they lost to Ohio State, is that going to kill them? They don't have a conference title game. What do we see with Notre Dame? I think it's hard to make a case that Notre Dame isn't a top 10 football team in the country. They've got Louisville this week, which, I mean, you're thanking your lucky stars if you're Notre Dame today that you have another ranked matchup on your schedule. They'll have USC and they'll have Clemson left on their resume to get to the college football playoff. And so this isn't a college football playoff segment, but as it pertains to Notre Dame, like we have to use some logic when we assess them at the end of the season and just ask ourselves, okay, are they one of the top 4 teams in the country? Right now I have them top 10. If they keep winning and handle business with some style, I think it's very difficult to keep them outside of that college football playoff, at least the conversation. I understand there's no conference title game, but at least the conversation, we have to kind of just use some good faith when we assess Notre Dame. If a top 10 loss against Ohio State on the final play is what does them in, I would be surprised. I would be surprised by that. At number 9, we have Washington. And a lot of people are a lot higher on Washington than we are, and that's fine. And I hate the fact that whenever we talk about Washington on this show, we have to talk about them in the sense of why we aren't as high as other people on Washington. I love Washington. I love Michael Penix. I think Michael Penix deserves to be squarely in that top 3 in the Heisman conversation, if not top 2. Washington has been incredible offensively. They've been like the Harlem Globetrotters in terms of how many yards a game they've put up. I will say this, though. We feel a little bit validated by what they did this past Saturday. Played Arizona, beat them by a touchdown. Gives you some cause for concern around Washington. I understand they are extremely explosive offensively, but I'm curious, when they play a team that is able to really bully them on the line of scrimmage or force them to go to their plan B offensively, what do they look like? I think they're a top 10 team. There's no way around it. I'm squarely in the conversation of Washington being a top 10 team in the country. But if we're the very last ones to jump on the Washington Huskies train as a top 5 team in college football, that's fine with us. Think they're a top 10 team, but for us this week, they're at number 9, much like they were last week. Now at number 8, down from last week, a spot is the USC Trojans. Their defense really worries me. There's no way around it. Like the defense is concerning. They have Arizona this week. They played Colorado last week. And when you look at the way that USC is built, man, the offense is built to go win a national title. No way around that. Like that is emphatically the case. Built to go win a national title. But the defense refuses to trend upward. Like we've seen it week in and week out. The defense just has the same song, second verse. Hey, we're not fitting inside zone correctly. Hey, we're having trouble one-on-one. Hey, when we line up and get spread out wide, like offenses pick us apart. At what point in time does that catch up with USC? I don't know, because the offense is built to win track meets. They play Notre Dame October 14th in South Bend. Reality will arrive then. If Notre Dame doesn't figure it out defensively at that point in time, they will not just lose that game. They will lose multiple games after that, is my humble opinion. Again, Caleb Williams keeps you in every single game. Heck, he could just JanSport them and allow them to win multiple games going forward that the defense would otherwise lose. But that's my concern. I haven't seen a positive trend, but even so, I think they're a top 10 team in the country, and they're down a spot for us right now, but they will have every chance to play the Oregons and play the Washingtons and play Notre Dame and prove us wrong. But again, top 10 right now, they're at number 8 because of what the defense hasn't done, and especially didn't do this past weekend in Boulder, Colorado. At number 7, got the Oregon Ducks. I love the way they're built. It can be distilled down to these 3 things for me when it comes to Oregon: quarterback, head coach, line of scrimmage. 3 yards a carry allowed for Oregon. Good for number 15 in the country. 6 yards a carry on offense. That is also good for 15 in the country. They're built to win in terms of how they're able to be multiple. They're also top 20 in terms of pass yards and pass yards allowed. And I love the way that Bo Nix has continued to trend the way that he trended last year. I love the way that Dan Lanning's got this team playing. Like, this is a team that I think has an edge about themselves. They seem like they're on a mission this year. I like the Ducks a lot. Right now, I think they're probably the best team in the Pac-12. That's how I feel about them. So at number 7, we got Oregon. Good for the Pac-12 too, having a couple of teams here in the top 10 before they turn the lights out. Absolutely love that. Now at number 6, we got Penn State. And Penn State would be higher for us on this list if we had a better filter to assess them through. We just haven't seen them play too tough of competition just yet. Now that West Virginia win, starting to trend better and better for Penn State. But even so, they're built to win in multiple ways. They have a bye, then they play UMass, and then they're at Ohio State. That game, October 21st in Columbus, that's when I think we can really start to fairly gauge how good Penn State's going to be and how seriously we can take them in that college football playoff conversation. But for me right now, man, definitely a top 10 team, definitely should be in the college football playoff conversation, and I'm very, very excited to see what they do in that road game in Columbus. Drew Aller's been balling. Defense is top 10. We love Penn State. We're going to keep an eye on them and kind of give it a little bit more time to develop. Still a first-year starting quarterback. Still a really good Big Ten conference. We'll see what happens there. At number 5, the Texas Longhorns. And this is their last talent test, and I put talent in air quotes for all y'all that are listening on podcast, against Oklahoma. If they get past Oklahoma, there's no other roster on the schedule that scares you. And we've said this a couple times around Texas. Not that there's not still losable games for them, but they should, in theory, handle business the rest of the way if they're able to get past Oklahoma. And if they beat Oklahoma, they will absolutely be in the top 4. We got a lot of kickback having Texas at 5. I know you've seen Texas as high as 3 on other polls. That's fine. I think Texas has they're sitting in a place where I don't have questions about the roster. I'm still letting it bake, still letting it marinate in terms of what they're going to be when they play some of these interesting spots, and they're the top dog now, and they're expected to win because they played Bama, and they weren't expected to beat Bama, according to Vegas, handled business in Tuscaloosa by double digits. Now you're in a position where everybody is expecting Texas to run the table. They're favored in Red River. They're going to be favored, I would imagine, the rest of their schedule. How do they handle that? But again, if they beat OU this week, I'm putting them in the top 4. Now, when it comes to our top 4, we got Ohio State at number 4. They have a bye week. Then they have Maryland. They already had their bye week, and now they have Maryland. Do we see a new Kyle McCord based on what he did against Notre Dame? Because he had that 2-minute drive to win the game, and you would have to imagine, the look in the mirror factor for Kyle McCord has to be upped quite a bit. And what I mean by that is, if you're Kyle McCord, you just proved to the rest of the country what you already thought about yourself. You've put what you thought you were into practice. And I think that's something that bolsters belief around him, and it probably has to bolster belief even more so within Kyle McCord. Do we see him kind of loosen the wing up a little bit, start to wheel and deal a little bit more, see Ohio State open it up? Because the offense, I keep saying this, it's built to score 40-plus a game. It has to score 40-plus a game for Ohio State to get to where they want to be, to beat the Penn State, to beat the Michigans, all that. Is Kyle McCord able to continue to trend the way that he has since being named the guy in that game against Western Kentucky, the game against Notre Dame, and now going forward? That needs to happen. But I mean, Ohio State, there's no way around it. The defense, I think, is improved from a year ago. They'll actually have a pretty good test this week against Maryland, in my opinion. But Ohio State, for us this week, number 4 on the Nothing But Ball poll. At number 3, you got Michigan. And Michigan just beat Nebraska. I mean, beat the brakes off Nebraska, to be real with y'all. Now they got Minnesota. At Minnesota, they should roll till November. Like, it's hard to really assess Michigan because they haven't had a super difficult test on their schedule just yet. And that's fine. It's no real fault of anyone on Michigan's roster right now. But you have to think, okay, if you're not getting tested until November, are you able to trend correctly from September to October? And Urban Meyer said this on Big Noon Kickoff, and I thought he actually made a really good point. And I know Michigan fans are not going to appreciate me citing Urban Meyer's logic when talking about your football team, but I mean, hey, we're going to do it. I think you have to be a different football team from September to November. Like, you can't just stay the same from post-fall camp and then expect to be the same team that beat Ohio State last year. Because Ohio State, they've had some tests. Penn State, they're going to play Ohio State in October. Is Michigan able to cultivate that positive trend internally? We'll see. I'm excited to watch it, but that's my one question. I'm not doubting it. I'm just saying they haven't had a ton of resistance, and resistance makes your muscles stronger. You get your muscles stronger by working it out. Michigan's not having to do a really difficult workout until November. So, even so, hard to make a discussion against Michigan being a top 3 team in the country based on what they've done. They've handled business and looked the way they're supposed to look for the most part. Michigan, for us this week, number 3 in the Nothing But Ball poll. Now, they would be number 2, but Florida State, for me, at number 2, like, they have the best 2 wins in the country. And this isn't a resume ranking per se. If it were, you probably put Florida State higher. But I think the way that we've seen Florida State win football games in Death Valley, where they don't have their best game running the football, Jordan Travis is dinged up. They play LSU and just are able to throw the ball all around the yard. Like, I still want to see some more from them defensively. I still want to see some more from them running the football. But as a whole, the roster itself is built to do some really good things. Jordan Travis deserves more buzz, I think, when it comes to that Heisman conversation. October 21st, they get Duke. That'll be really interesting because you would hope Riley Leonard is able to go for that game. I don't know or pretend to know where he's at injury-wise right now. You hope he's healthy. I think that could be something we learn a lot about when it comes to Florida State in that game. And then also November 11th, they get Miami. Both those in Tallahassee. But both those teams, I think you're viewing a little bit differently as the college football season wears on and seeing what they're doing Saturday in and Saturday out. And, just curious to see what Florida State is as they get a little bit more developed along the rest of their schedule and have some more tests the rest of their schedule. At number 1, we got Georgia. A lot of people are saying, well, Georgia looked this way against Auburn and Carson Beck's this, and Georgia hasn't been as dominant. They were down against South Carolina. They were down against Auburn. I hear all that. There's no way around it. Georgia in 2023 is not what Georgia was in 2022. No disagreements. Not saying anything against Georgia from 2022 or 2023. They're just different football teams. Can we agree on that? Can we also focus on what's true with Georgia, though? Here's what's true about Georgia. 1, they have the best coach in college football today, Junior. Okay, I'm not talking about greatest of all time. Nick Saban still has the throne. But Kirby Smart, back-to-back national titles, I don't know how you disagree with him being the best coach in college football today. Second, they have likely the best roster in college football in terms of how they've recruited and built that thing. At worst, maybe they're a top 3 roster if you really want to feel strongly about another school with Bama or Ohio State or whoever you want to throw in the mix there. Bottom line, they have one of the best rosters in college football. So, best coach, best or arguably one of the best rosters. And also the fact that I don't think we've actually seen their best just yet, and they're going to be a team that I think is better in November than they are right now. Georgia, for us, is still number 1. They've shown a tremendous response mechanism to this point in the year, being down against South Carolina, no panic, fight their way back, end up winning that game handily. Against Auburn, looked very mortal on the road, rivalry game. I'm not docking them for winning that game on the road in the way they did against Auburn. I think Carson Beck is starting to pick it up a little bit more too. Just keep an eye on how he plays the rest of the season because I think he's going to be a different version of himself here in October based on how he played against Auburn. I think his confidence is growing. And I think that offense too is starting to find their mojo. So all that's to say, that's our Nothing But Ball poll. To recap it for you, Notre Dame at 10, Washington at 9, USC at 8, Oregon at 7, Penn State at 6, Texas at 5. At 4 now, we got Ohio State. At 3, we got Michigan. At 2, you got Florida State. And at 1, we got Georgia. That is nothing but ball poll. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of the Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.